Funding for the art show was made possible by Montgomery County Arts and Cultural District, the Virginia W. Kettering Foundation, proud supporter of the arts in our community, and viewers like you. Thank you.
In this edition of the art show, one playful artist in Riverside admits to an addiction.
There's interference paints, metallics, neons, just a lot of crazy textures and colors that I like to play with.
Dayton Philharmonic conductor receives prestigious award.
I sort of define the job as being one of community services.
Two artists find a novel way to honor one legendary cartoonist.
This man really was quite brilliant.
And we take a gaze at giant glass sculptures.
The colors are so vibrant. There's no other artist in glass that's doing what Dale Chihuly is doing.
It's all ahead on this edition of The Art Show. Hello, I'm Rodney Veal, and this is The Art Show, where each week we showcase local, regional, and national artists and arts organizations. First up, Dayton artist Amy Kolar Anderson's medium of choice is acrylic paint. Her paintings depict narratives about obsession, duality, and containment in order to explore the differences between being in and out of control.
I've heard a variety of ways my work is described. Some people say that it's scary, which I don't agree with. There tends to be a little bit of a dark edge to a lot of my compositions. Some people say whimsical, playful, colorful, surreal. They are somewhat of this world, but then twisted and somewhat not of this world.
Working from a studio in a Riverside home, Amy Kolar Anderson uses a paintbrush to bring to life people and places that seem familiar, but also contain elements of the unknown, the bizarre, the alien.
I've always been an artist, was always a creative kid. I did attend the School of the Art Institute of Chicago, but I feel that most of my training has come from researching other artists, talking to other artists, experimenting. I learned with oils, but the slow dry time, all the toxic solvents, they just weren't my favorites. With acrylics, you don't have any of that. You know, I can do a layer of paint and within 10 minutes I'm working on top of it as opposed to 24 hours with the oils. Acrylics also have all sorts of mediums. There's interference paints, metallics, neons, just a lot of crazy textures and colors that I like to play with.
In addition to her playful use of color and materials, Amy uses her canvases to create characters and tell stories, finding inspiration in a variety of places.
There's always these layers of narration and character development and such. One of my recent series was based on the writings of Lewis Carroll and his Alice in Wonderland books. And so I read the books, researched the characters, and created drawings that I then transferred to the canvas. It was a lot of preparation, a lot of pre-planning. And then sometimes I'm inspired by dreams, sometimes working in the yard, I'll get an idea, sometimes life events or stories on the news. Inspiration can come from anywhere, and I like that variety. I don't want to just make the same thing all the time. I like the challenge of new directions and new materials. As far as completing a painting, it takes anywhere from 50 hours to 200 hours, depending on the size and the level of complexity. I do have a YouTube channel. I've been posting time-lapse videos. I've learned through trial and error to set up the camera, and the timer goes off every minute. So I've had a lot of fun playing with time in there, whether it's showing parts of the window in the frame or showing my cats flipping and flopping as they sleep or showing clocks tick away the minutes. It actually helps the paintings move a little bit quicker even, which is strange. I guess it just keeps me focused.
Amy's paintings have been exhibited in galleries and juried shows throughout Ohio and across the United States. In the winter of 2014, she created a series of entirely new works for Identification, a solo show at Art Street Studio D Gallery on the University of Dayton campus.
I was asked by Brian LaDuca, the director of Art Street, to participate. This year's theme in general was on human rights. So Brian and I talked about what directions the show could take. And that's when I decided I wanted my show to be about empathy and just connecting with other people. There were 6 paintings in the show, and those were more of the internal, sort of looking inward. The palette was also very, very different from what I've normally done. My work had been very loud and in some cases a little obnoxious, a little flashy, and this work was very quiet and soft, lots of grays and muted blues and silvers. So it was just a lot quieter. There were 2 face panels on either side of the gallery space, and I had the faces of family members, loved ones, friends, people that I've had really great conversations with. Basically, the faces would transition down into pebbles, and then the pebbles would go across the floor. The pebbles represented sort of the nameless, faceless other. And as they transitioned into the people that you know and love, they go from being these elements that you can ignore and pretend aren't there to elements that you would do anything for. So in the center of the gallery, we had the interactive workstation, and I created these canvas pebbles that people could draw or write on, any sort of situation where they've learned empathy or whatever they wanted to talk about that tied into that idea with connecting with others. So it was really exciting to see the piece evolve throughout the month and see these pebbles multiply, and they were able to sort of shift and turn and just sort of dance in the space. It was very meditative, and I really enjoyed how it came together.
Originally a native of the Chicago area, Amy moved to Dayton in the 1990s. Since then, she's developed strong ties within the local art scene and now finds herself playing a special role for a company that's part of the city's reinvention.
Dayton has been growing and changing over the last 18 years. Warped Wing Brewery is one of the newest breweries in town. I'm considered their official brewery artist, and I do all the specialty beer designs. It's been fun working with the guys and doing a little more graphic work. With these Warped Wing projects, I'm using some of those skills of the graphic design, but I'm not approaching it like it's a graphic design project. These are works of art. It's very exciting to be a part of it and get to taste the final product at the end, how all the visions and concepts and everything kind of come together.
If you like what you see, don't be shy. Interact with Amy on Facebook or her website, kolaranderson.com. Our next story is also out of Dayton. Artistic director and conductor for the Dayton Philharmonic Orchestra, Neil Gittleman was one of 6 recipients to be awarded the prestigious 2014 Governor's Awards for the Arts in Ohio. He is credited with bringing classical music to the people through his community outreach programs.
I was a little surprised, but I knew I'd been nominated before in the past, so if anything, the surprise was that I got the award.
The award is the 2014 Governor's Awards for the Arts in Ohio for community development and participation.
It's really, I think, the one Governor's Award in the arts that I could accept. The role that I play for the orchestra in terms of community involvement and the way I sort of define the job as being one of community services, I can sort of see how if someone was going to nominate me for something, that would be the category that would be appropriate. It's very flattering, and it's nice to know that people in the community and that your colleagues, especially in the art community, appreciate and acknowledge what it is that you do.
Neil Gittleman was first exposed to orchestral music by watching Leonard Bernstein's Young People's Concerts on television. It didn't take long for Neil to discover Bernstein was unique.
It was entertaining, it was educating, and you got a sense of understanding what the music was about because he would explain what was going to happen, and then you heard it. And I just assumed that's what all concerts would be like. And when my parents started taking me to the concert hall to see concerts, it wasn't anything like that. Nobody was making it fun. When I got into this business, I remember that feeling of a wall between you and what was happening on stage. And I remember thinking, you know, if I'm going to do this, I want to do it more like what Bernstein did.
Gittleman's mission and that of the Dayton Philharmonic is rooted in community. Ultimately, it's empowering people in the community of all types of backgrounds and interest levels to feel a sense of ownership in the orchestra and the music they play.
I've always felt from the very beginning that it's our job as classical musicians and as a conductor to make the music that we play relevant to the audience. It starts with me and my just sincere belief that that's part of our mission. It means if you're playing a piece of music that you think might be a little more difficult for the audience to get into, or where there's a particularly important element that you think would help enhance their experience, that you say something, I think this piece is really cool because it does this. Community engagement is one reason why we play classical music. We have pops concerts. We now have rock music concerts. We have family concerts. We have educational concerts. It's to have as many different ways in to the orchestra as possible, so that someone who maybe isn't interested in Beethoven but really likes the Beatles can feel there's something for them.
In addition to a variety of concert themes, Gittleman and the Dayton Philharmonic also engage the community through the Stained Glass Concert Series.
The Stained Glass Concert Series was a conscious effort to develop a more diverse audience. We take a classical-sized orchestra and we do a free concert in churches in the African American community. And then at the end of the concert, the last piece that we do is a piece that the church choir sings with the orchestra. And then part two of the Stained Glass concert concept is that we then invite people from that church to come to one of our regular classical concerts. So we have $5 or $6 tickets to come, and it's been very good in terms of bringing people into concerts who might not otherwise think about coming, and a sense of involvement and communication that goes both ways. And it's been very exciting.
Neil also dedicates his efforts to education. Modeled after a wildly successful program in Venezuela, Dayton Philharmonic's Cue the Music is dramatically changing the life trajectories of urban children.
Cue the Music is the brainchild of Gloria Pugh, the education director at the Dayton Performing Arts Alliance. What happens in an El Sistema-inspired program is that after school, kids come and they have a snack, they have tutoring in their regular classroom subjects, they have a musicianship class, they have a group lesson on their instrument, they have a sectional rehearsal, they have an orchestra rehearsal. So music 5 days a week, practically the entire year, is part of their experience. They're musicians from the orchestra who are the main principal teachers of the kids, and it's really amazing what the kids can accomplish, not just musically, but also academically. We were all a little nervous when the Cue the Music kids took their first proficiency exams, but they did really well, and better than the kids in their school who were not part of Cue the Music.
The fact that Neil Gittleman sees his position as one of community service is quite remarkable. His interest in collectiveness is leading to change.
For me, that's what community involvement is, that you could help the audience feel like it was their music and those were their musicians on the stage, and this should mean something to them, and then did mean something to them. It's people in the community of all types, of all backgrounds, of all interest levels, feeling a sense of ownership in the orchestra and a sense of ownership in the music that we play. A sense that we are welcoming and inclusive to anybody who's curious, rather than shuttered and isolated and walled off from all but people who have, a list of high academic degrees and achievement and highfalutin aspirations.
If you've never been to a Dayton Philharmonic concert, please buy a ticket and try it. The new season has been announced, so look for it on DaytonPerformingArts.org.
To view any of tonight's stories again or watch an episode in its entirety, watch The Art Show on demand at thinktv.org/The Art Show. You'll also find bonus features and extended interviews on select artists.
Just east of Dayton, Columbus artists Wayne Kane and Daniel White pay homage to legendary cartoonist Billy Ireland through their stunning stained glass creations. Crafted with great care and attention to detail, each panel depicts aspects of Ireland's life and illustrious career.
We had an opportunity to commission this art glass, and it seemed to us to be an ideal opportunity to use art glass to teach people about Billy Ireland's life and work, and to celebrate that in a format that might be somewhat unexpected and prompt people to think a little bit differently about how cartoons work and why they are beautiful and how they are beautiful.
We already felt like we had connected to Billy Ireland, and it was very exciting, the possibility of being able to make something that would go into a museum that would bear his name.
So I'm very touched that with all the artwork that Billy Ireland produced, that you would go out, that the Billy Ireland Museum people would go out and commission another artist to create a work of art.
Billy Ireland was the most famous cartoonist to work in Columbus, Ohio. Billy Ireland was born in Chillicothe, Ohio in 1880, and the story is that he, as a little boy, drew with chalk on the sidewalks.
I love the fact that he's self-taught. I really identify with that. That to me shows that, you know, his art came from within.
We need to remember that at the turn of the 20th century, photographs were still relatively new in newspapers. So cartoonists were hired to do all kinds of drawings.
I love the way that he was into politics and that he fought for what he believed in. I like his robustness, you know, the way he loved good food, and he liked to drink, and he liked to go fishing, and he liked to, you know, swim naked as a boy, and all of these things, you know, and hang out with politicians and judges. And he evidently was a very well-rounded man who just fit right in. And evidently, in order to do that, he was very respected for it.
Ireland drew 5 to 7 editorial cartoons every week, as well as an incredibly complicated full-page Sunday feature called The Passing Show.
All of it is very, very relevant. It looks like some of it may be dated, but the more you look at it, the more you're like, I know exactly where that applies to, you know.
Billy Ireland passionately cared about his community, and I think it's that love of place that really shows up in his work. He had opportunities to go to New York. William Randolph Hearst reportedly offered to build a color printing plant here in Central Ohio if Billy Ireland would do a comic strip for him, and Ireland refused. And after the flood of 1913, the waterfront downtown along the Scioto was devastated. It really was a slum. Basically, what Ireland did was to try to talk to people about Columbus's front door, that folks who came into Columbus from the west really saw a slum right before they reached downtown, and that we should be embarrassed about that, and we could do better.
I got 3/16. I have a 16th of that. Bring it this way. I've got about 1/4 inch.
The work came with a number of challenges. One is, how do you translate cartoons, which were intended for paper, to art glass?
So then, after we cut the glass, it goes to the painting stage. And that is very, very, very elaborate. You have to work out all your different colors, you have to work out your firing temperatures, and you have to work out your style. I think we probably spent 3 or 4 months just practicing the style. And the reason is that you don't want to start off, you don't want your project to look like it's a progression of skills. You want to go into it with top-notch and be top-notch throughout the whole project.
Each panel is on average probably fired between 4 and 6 times, depending on how many colors or what touch-up a line may need here or there, or what was lost in the kiln, because the kiln can sometimes burn away the color in an unexpected way, or the oil didn't grab as much pigment as it looks like. My job was to come up with paints that would look as much like watercolor as possible, and pen lines and strokes and thicknesses that would look as much like what he was doing on paper, except we're using glass. We have a selection of cartoons that we could use, and then figuring out how they interacted best with each other and what position, and how to balance them throughout the window so that it didn't look like, you just place them in picture frame, so to speak, but they're all interacting with each other in some way, moving or playing one off the other.
The interesting thing I think about our art glass is that it follows the tradition of art glass in the great cathedrals of Europe. The art glass is there to teach, and the window here in the reading room is intended to beautify, but also to teach people about Billy Ireland's career and all of the things that he did for our community.
And I hope that one day when people see this piece, they will think that someone did this out of a true passion and love, not only for their craft, but for their art and for the inspiration that it came from.
We want the windows to draw people into that type of sense of just awe, of, appreciation that, this man really was quite brilliant.
To plan a day trip or learn more about the museum, visit cartoons.osu.edu. Finally, tonight, Dale Chihuly has taken the ancient Italian art form of glassblowing and transformed it into a large-scale sculpture practice. We enter this brightly colored world at the Phoenix Desert Botanical Garden and learn how cacti and art connect.
It's called the Sapphire Star. More than 700 blue to clear spires begin the Chihuly in the garden exhibit.
The colors are so vibrant. There's no other artist in glass that's doing what Dale Chihuly is doing.
What he's doing in Phoenix is generating oohs, ahs, and questions.
So what's a beluga? I guess they kind of look like whales.
So do you think it's like this big, fish hook?
Each piece, from this chandelier to the scarlet and yellow icicle tower, is created by a team of glass blowers with final approval coming from Dale Chihuly.
He is probably the most successful artist to exhibit in gardens around the world. But there is nowhere that he has exhibited where he has our plant collection, the beautiful light that the desert has, and then the wonderful vistas and backdrops. It's just a different space for him to see his work.
And that's why McGinn says Phoenix is the only garden to host 2 Chihuly exhibits. The first was in 2008.
And we had over 500,000 people visit the garden in 6 months, which was a record for us.
This exhibit features 21 installations spread across 55 acres.
Chihuly's signature in every show that I've ever seen, whether it's a fine art museum or a garden, is a boat. He's a collector of boats. He collects many, many things, but one of the things he's an avid collector of are these antique wooden boats. This boat was actually a tender. It dates back to the 1800s, so they're quite fragile when they come. And he loves to put what he calls a millefiori, which is just this wonderful showcase of different shapes and colors of glass into the boat.
For more than a year, Chihuly and his team worked with garden staff to pick the best spots. Moving the artwork from Chihuly's studio in Seattle to a canvas in the desert took patience.
The glass came in 6 tractor-trailer trucks over the course of 3 days. They come in hundreds of boxes, and each box contains pieces of each of the installations. Chihuly sends a team of 12 down to help us through the installation. They actually do the physical installation itself, and it took us about 2 weeks to get it all installed. The Sun was the largest installation. It took the longest to install, about 3.5 days. It took a team of 5 Chihuly installers, and it has 2,000 pieces of glass.
Some colors and shapes are so striking you can't miss them, like these yellow herons.
Very graceful, and they're sitting in the among herbs. So as you're standing and looking at the piece, you're also smelling lavender and thyme. There's a chocolate flower. So it's just this wonderful sensory experience.
Other pieces blend in so well you might mistake them for desert plants.
You could stand here for 10 minutes and watch people, they'll walk right by it.
But when the sun goes down, McKinn says every piece becomes a star.
At night, it's a completely different show. All the sculptures are lit, and we have, going up the Garden Butte, we have 26 neon panels, so the garden's just glowing at night.
Keeping all this glass shiny requires the white glove treatment. It takes about 10 hours each week.
The best thing I hear a lot is, wow, look at that. They really love that. But for us, you know, we are about being the garden, and to have visitors come in and they'll say, wow, look at that, and then they'll go, and look at that plant. You know, that is really cool. Or I hear often just walking around, you know, I didn't know this place was here, or I didn't know how beautiful the desert could be.
While it's been more than a decade since Chihuly had a temporary exhibit at the Dayton Art Institute, some of his work remains in the permanent collection. To learn more about this iconic glass artist, visit chihuly.com. And that wraps it up for this edition of The Art Show. Now is a perfect time to go out there and enjoy the art scene in Dayton. Until next time, I'm Rodney Veal, and thanks for watching.
Funding for the Art Show was made possible by Montgomery County Arts and Cultural District, the Virginia W. Kettering Foundation, proud supporter of the arts in our community, Ohio Arts Council, Ohio Humanities Council, and viewers like you. Thank you.